The B-18 Bolo bomber, created by a Douglas Aircraft Company, was the first medium-sized bomber designed to be a key component of the U.S.'s air power. However, it was later surpassed by superior bombers like the B-17 Flying Fortress. Despite being considered underpowered by the 1940s, the U.S. military relied heavily on the B-18 before World War II. However, most B-18s were destroyed during the attack on Pearl Harbor, leading to their relegation to training and reconnaissance. Despite its usefulness, the B-18 bomber has since been forgotten. In 1934, the U.S. Army Air Corps sought to improve the Martin B-10, a popular bomber, by doubling its bomb load and range. Douglas, Boeing, and Martin presented prototypes capable of carrying 1 ton of bombs at 200 miles per hour over 2,000 miles. The contract winner was determined through a fly-off at Wilbur Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. Boeing's B-17 Flying Fortress was considered the superior aircraft due to its 4 large engines, exceeding performance expectations. Boeing lost a contract due to a tragic accident with the B-17 prototype, which crashed with control still locked. The Douglas Aircraft Company won the contract, charging $1.09 million for each B-18 compared to Boeing's $1.86 million. The Army was excited about the B-18's potential, signing off on 13 developmental aircraft and later ordering an additional 177 B-18 Bolos. The aircraft was based on the successful DC-2 commercial airliner, but had a larger wingspan and deeper fuselage for accommodating 4,500 pounds bombs and a 6-person crew. The B-18 bomber, powered by 2 Wright R-1820 radial engines, featured a nose dorsal and ventral gun turrets. Preston Tucker was awarded a contract to develop a remote-controlled gun turret. 2 more contracts were granted for 217 B-18 Model A's, a modified version of the original Bolo design with improved 1,000 horsepower Wright Cyclones and Tetheran propellers. The bomber's nose redesign gave it its characteristic profile. On February 23, 1937, the first production of test and evaluation B-18As were delivered to Wright Field for airborne maneuvers and powered turret experiments. The Bolo, an American bomber type, was sent to operational groups, including the 7th Bombardment Group at Hamilton Field, California. With a maximum speed of 270 miles per hour, cruising speed of 167 miles per hour, and a combat range of 850 miles, it became the most deployed American bomber type outside the U.S. during World War II. During World War II, the Bolo was in service with every major command, including 9 reconnaissance and 34 bombardment squadrons. The aircraft served as a stopgap while the B-17 was refined and produced in larger quantities. To keep the production program alive, Douglas worked on a radical redesign of the aircraft in November 1939. The newly designated B-23 Dragons were faster, had a larger wingspan, and had the first tail turret seen on an Air Corps bomber. The tail gun was a .50 caliber machine gun with a telescopic sight. However, the Dragons couldn't keep up with newer medium bombers like the North American B-25 Mitchell or the Martin B-26 Marauder, so they never entered combat overseas. They were later used for coastal patrol and training missions, but were unsuitable for long-range bombardment. The original Bolo bomber, designed by Douglas Aircraft Company, was considered outdated and underpowered by the Air Corps. Its defense armament was deemed inadequate, and the aircraft was outclassed by more modern European planes. The Douglas Aircraft Company only managed to secure a 20-plan contract with the Royal Canadian Air Force, designated Digby Mark I, which was sent to the 10 Squadron as a replacement for the Westland Wapiti. The B-18s were used in reconnaissance missions in Nova Scotia in response to the appearance of German U-boats in North American waters. The B-18's first action occurred on October 25, 1941, when squadron leader C.L. Annas attacked the U-boat patrol. A year later, the bomber sank a German submarine U-520 down eastern Newfoundland. The Canadian Air Force conducted 11 attacks on U-boats. However, the B-18s were only used as anti-submarine bombers for a short time, and in 1943, they were replaced by the consolidated B-24 Liberator, a heavy American bomber with a wider range and bigger payload. The U.S. military's Bolo bomber played a modern utility role throughout World War II, but was nearly wiped out at Pearl Harbor in 1941. The first Japanese raid destroyed most of the B-18s in the Pacific, and the Japanese Sancher attacked Clark Field in the Philippines, damaging several light cruisers, destroyers, 8 battleships, and 188 airplanes. Only a few Bolos survived the attack, but they wouldn't play a significant role later in the war. The remaining bombers in Hawaii and Alaska were sent in reconnaissance patrols to anticipate possible attacks on the mainland U.S. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Navy engaged in a fight with the U.S. Navy near Midway Atoll in the North Pacific Ocean. Hawaii-based B-18s were sent to search for the fleet, and the B-17 entered service in November 1942. The Bolo would be used for different roles, such as armored transport between Mindanao and Locan, Gilbert Islands and Marshall Islands campaigns, and anti-submarine warfare bombers in North America and the Caribbean. In October 1942, the Bolos were incorporated into 4 squadrons from the East Coast and 6 from the West Coast, and another 15 were sent to the Caribbean. Under Lieutenant General Frank Maxwell Andrews of the Caribbean Defense Command, Andrews supported developing the B-17 over the Bolo in the 1930s. The U.S. Army turned all of its anti-submarine warfare aircraft over to the Navy in August 1943, leading to the formation of squadrons of B-24s and consolidated PB-4Y Liberators, ultimately leaving the Bolo out of the game. The improved version of the bomber was also involved in non-combat roles, with Bolos and Dragons sold for cargo hauling and crop spraying to commercial operators. Only 6 Bolos still exist today, with one living in the jungle of Hawaii's Big Island where it crashed on February 15, 1941.